So, where are we and what's going on today?
We are at the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, and we're here for a hearing it's an appeal against our win, against our stopping the second silo near Marsh Fork Elementary School. And we have only 3 people who are actually testifying, and one is from Jackson and Kelly, who I assume would be an intervener in this particular thing. And then we have the DEP, and then we have us, Cold River Mountain Watch. So the 3 lawyers have made opening statements and cross-examined and argued about a lot of things that are totally irrelevant to what's going on. It's been one of the worst hearings I've ever been to.
What are they trying to do?
They're trying to throw a red herring into it, for one thing. The coal company's lawyer is trying to intimate that Stephanie Timmermeyer, who is director of the DEP, was influenced by Governor Manchin, or told by Governor Manchin, in some kind of way, an email or some other form of conversation, to not issue the permit, which is really funny because Governor Manchin had promised Coal River Mountain Watch and some of the people in the area that he would investigate that and that he would stop it, and then he backed out.
Now, what's the very basic, what's the permit over, and what's the overview of?
The permit is over the fact that the children in Marsh Fork Elementary have been suffering illnesses for a very long time. A lot of these are upper respiratory illnesses, they're stomach illnesses, all types of, different kinds of illnesses. And it's been on a regular basis. And in the summer, when they're away from the school, things get better. But while they're in the school, they keep having all these infections and this type of thing. And plus, there is a sludge dam directly above the school that we're also fighting. But this particular hearing is essentially about the fact that the permit was issued illegally.
What happened around the starting the construction?
Oh, okay. Well, this was if you were here for Mountain Justice Summer, not just this past summer, but the summer before that, you were in a hearing where we were having a hearing on the silo. We had all kinds of people speak out. A lot of people from Mountain Justice Summer, but a lot of people from the community too, against the silo. And essentially, the DEP agents sort of slept through it until finally someone would say, "Are you listening to me?" And what was ironic about it was they had already started the foundation on the second silo and had no permit. And the reason they do that is what typically happens is they'll start something like that and do something like that, and then they'll get caught, and then the DEP will permit it after the fact. So, it's a really bad situation when you cannot count on people who are supposed to protect you and protect the children, that they lie, steal, whatever it takes to get their coal mine.
How do you feel about the way the hearing is going so far?
Well, I really think that if the Surface Mine Board looks back at the certified record, they're going to see that Mr. McCombs was telling a big pack of lies up here the whole time he was up there. And McCluskey, of course, he's more subtle, but he twists the truth. It's hard to catch him in an outright lie, but we could definitely catch him when he was trying to throw the red herring in, because he didn't want to discuss the issues, because he's already lost it. I think we have a very good chance. Eventually, there will be no silo there. We have to stand around it and not let them build it.
What's the, I guess, a little bit of the history that's got us to this place as far as the permits?
Well, we have been fighting about the dust in the school for a very long time, even before the silos were built. And then, they said, well, the silos would keep the dust down and blah, blah, blah. And we were so busy at that time with other things that we didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But when we finally realized, what a detriment it was and how much it was harming the children, then we started working on it independently as Coal River Mountain Watch. And we would, at least, what we were doing essentially was making it public, the damage that was being done. And so then we had our first Mountain Justice Summer, and a lot of people came to West Virginia. We had a lot of marches, a lot of rallies, a lot of different kinds of things, and that brought it more into the newspapers and television and made it a public issue. And then we've managed to make it a national issue. We're going to go back on that. We're back on.
Now, according to what we just looked at, they were asking those questions and wanting to know what the operation was. Apparently, the APDS permit was acceptable at that point.
Let me back up. My question, I think the form simply said if you're within 300 feet, provide valid existing rights.
Yes.
The form does not ask you to specify precisely which activities were within 300 feet, does it?
No, they did not specify that in case not.
Turn then, if you would, to exhibit number 6.
Okay.
Can you identify this as the original permit approval for revision number 8, that is for the silo the first time?
Yes, it's from Deputy Director Keith Porterfield, dated June 30th, 2005, for revision number 8. It's mentioned as hereby approved. Okay. And if you flip through these other pages, is it fair to say that others, such as Mr. Watovich, who's looking at the permit supervisor, Manuel Seja, the environmental inspector, and Greg Demian, permit reviewer, all reviewed revision number 8? That is correct. There's facts and findings checklist, and checklist from various of those individual geologists and reviewers and such. Okay, and they all ultimately approve revision number 8 or recommend approval? These works would have to be done prior to the letter being sent out, yes. Are all of those people that I just mentioned experienced in the permit reviews for DEP? I've known them to be there for several years, yes. In the permit application for revision number 8, were you asked to identify or describe whether any of the revisions you sought to make inside of the exhibit? Let me back up. Revision number 8, did it seek to change the permit boundary on the western edge at all? No, sir, it did not. But it sought to build the second silo, is that correct? That is correct. Did the permit application forms that you filled out request that you identify whether any of the revisions you were seeking to make occurred within 300 feet of a school or an occupied dwelling or within 100 feet of a cemetery? No, it did not. So it would be fair to say DEP's forms had never previously asked whether, at least this form, did not ask you whether the change in activities were within any of the so-called prohibited zones. That is correct. Would you turn then to exhibit number 7, which is a memo dated June 13, 2005 from Mr. Watovich to Director Huffman. Do you see that document? Yes, I have that. If you turn to page 2 of that document under the heading Valid Existing Rights, do you see that? Yes, I do. Is it fair to say there that Mr. Watovich determined that the company had valid existing rights for the proposed silo because it was on previously bonded area and the preparation plan itself was constructed prior to August 3 of 77? That's what it states. It says the proposed clean coal silo is to be constructed on previously bonded area of the permit. And thus has valid existing rights to operate. Would you turn to page 1 of that document, the bottom paragraph under the dust? And you can read to summarize for us what Mr. Watovich was saying about the potential dust impacts of the second silo.
Objection, Mr. Chairman. This is a purely legal issue. What dust impacts the silo has is irrelevant to the termination issue.
I think Mr. Clark said it's not. I think his opening was it's not purely legal issue. One must look at the types of activities were conducted. It's our position that the types of activities
will include the scope and intensity of the activities that occurred there in the past. I'm sorry.
The summarize, basically, he indicated that the use of a stockpile was created less dust than the open stockpile does.
The use of stockpile or the use of silo?
I'm sorry, the use of the silo was less dusty than the open stockpile.
Would you turn then to exhibit number 8, which is, I believe, the suspension order of July 15, 2005 for revision number 8.
Okay, I have that.
Okay. Is that an accurate characterization of what exhibit number 8 is?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And in paragraph 2 of this letter, I think we've all seen before, DEP suspended that because of concerns the boundaries depicted in revision 8 may have been extended without approval of the agency. Is that a fair statement? The middle of the second paragraph.
Any question yet? I'm sorry.
The reason for the suspension was a concern that the permit application for revision 8 may have extended the permit boundary beyond that which was approved in 1982.
Yes, it was the western boundary property, permit boundary limits was the reason for the denial.
Did DEP in this suspension order of July 15, 2005 ever tell Goals Coal that even if you had not extended the permit boundary, that you could not build a silo there because the silo hadn't been there in either 1987 or 82?
I've never heard that mentioned.
Turn then, if you would, to exhibit number 9 and ask if you can identify that document.
This is a document dated from Director Huffman, dated July 27, 2005. It's an order. And it's this is the rescission order that he had submitted to us.
Did the rescission order ever advise Goals Coal Company that even if the...
Mr. Chairman, we've gone through a stack of documents that are all in the record and all speak for themselves. I don't know how much longer we should go through them, reading documents and characterizing. When the board can do that, he can do that in argument. It's a waste of the board's time.
Does that document advise you that if the silo was inside the boundary, it couldn't be built because it didn't exist in 77 or 82?
No, sir, did not.
All right. Turn to exhibit number 10, if you will. Can you identify what this document is?
This is an application for permit revisions, blank application.
Does this apply both to revisions that don't seek to expand permit boundaries and those which do seek to expand permit boundaries?
Yes, it does.
Is this the current revision form that DEP utilizes?
Yes, it is.
Does this
I think
form,
it's been updated. This is in August 8, 2001. But it's the same, basically the same format.
do you know whether the application requests the applicant who's making a revision but not changing a permit boundary to identify whether any of the revised activities are within 300 feet of a school, dwelling, or public building?
When you do a revision, you answer questions 1 through 6, questions 7 through 18 are for boundary revisions, and the question as opposed to moving within 300 foot of the school is question number 14, so it would only apply to boundary revision.
So if I were not changing the boundary in a permit revision, but rather just changing activities within the existing boundary, DEP's form does not ask you to identify whether that revised activity is within 300 feet of a school, occupied dwelling, public building, etc.
No, it does not.
Prior to the construction of the first, let me back up, the first silo was permitted, I believe, in 2003, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Has it been utilized now for several years?
Yes, it has.
Okay, explain to us how that silo works. If you look back at exhibit number 1, the last page of that shows a picture of the silo, I believe. Trains actually drive through that.
Basically, the way the operations operate the silo is they take the coal, put it straight into the silo rather than put it on the ground. The train loading facility, the trains actually back the empty cars. They bring a 100-car train to us. They split the train in 50-car segments. They push the cars up to the engines right near the silo. They start loading the 50-car and they go away from the silo. And they do that, and they go back, they switch to get the other run of cars and come back and do the same thing. And then when they get ready to take it off the yard, and they make it up in one train and they go on down to Sylvester with it.
Explain to me how a car is physically loaded. Is it loaded, the silo, the train actually drives through a cutout of the silo, is that correct?
Yeah, the silo basically is totally enclosed with the exception of one walk-in door, I believe, and enough room on either end of the track to get the cars and the locomotive in place. And the operators, everybody sits inside the facility, inside underneath the silo. And when they load the train, they have a telescoping chute that comes down on top of the cars. They fill the cars up, and as the cars are moved under the support of the locomotive downstream or down track, then the car is loaded. When it gets full, the operator turns off the slide gate or the chute, picks it up, and goes to the next spot.
How was coal loaded in the rail cars prior to the construction and use of silo number 1?
Very similar to that, except that the silo itself, or the loadout itself, was actually totally open. The only thing supporting the hop of coal above the cars was 4 columns. So everything else was open, and the operator set off to the side.
Now, that old loadout, though, was not within 300 feet of the school, was it?
No, sir, it wasn't.
It was further away from the school than the silo number 1?
Yeah, it's actually about 300 feet from the silo.
Is the silo number 1 within 300 feet of the school?
Yes, it is.
How far is it? Do you know?
It's around 250 feet, something like that. I can't remember the exact number.
How far is silo number 2?
Silo number 2 is probably another 20 feet, 30 feet away from that, farther away from the school.
270, 280?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Did the United States Environmental Protection Agency come to inspect your operations at the Bowles facility this past summer?
Yes, they came there in August.
Turn to exhibit number 11, if you will. I ask if you can identify this as a report that was issued by U.S. EPA Region 3 based on inspection of your facility.
Yeah, the top page is a fax, an email from William Stuberville, I believe, to Thomas Cook, and attached to those are 2 reports for the Goals coal report and the Marsh Fork dust report.
Were you? Did you meet with any of the folks from EPA Region 3 when they came down?
Yes, I did. I met with all of them.
And did they actually inspect the facility to determine what type of dust impacts the school might be having on the Marsh Fork Elementary School?
Yeah, they spent 2 days at our facility. They had, I believe there was 4 or 5 individuals represented there. They looked at the entire preparation plant. We were inside the plant while it was running. Observed the coal being transported off the mountain from the deep mines. They observed the train being loaded and actually set up some dust sample sites as the train was prior to the train being loaded and during the loading operation.
You know, if you turn to page 7 of exhibit number 11, I think you'll see some areas I've highlighted there.
Yes.
And looking at the bottom of the page and going over to page 8 is a description, I believe, of the sampling that was done by EPA. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it describes where they put up their sampling devices in relation to the coal silo and train.
Yeah, there's 2 gentlemen that conducted that. They set 5 different locations. They did an analysis of the train actually being loaded prior to, and then they came back that evening or the next morning. I guess it was that evening and obtained their sample units.
So they sampled for particulate matter both before a train was loaded and then while the train was being loaded. Is that fair?
That is correct.
And they put sampling devices in the schoolyard and other locations around the site?
Yeah, they had 2 at the school, one at the schoolyard, one in the playground area, about 300 feet away, or 400 feet at the school playground area, 200 feet in the schoolyard, that was northwest, 300 feet downstream the loading, and 100 feet upstream from the load.
Did you load this train?
And 50 feet downwind of the load.
I'm sorry. Did you load this train any differently than any other train, you know?
No, he come in about 5:30, 6 o'clock that evening of this particular day. And we didn't know they were coming, didn't know what they were going to do, so we didn't do anything different.
Didn't know EPA was coming?
Didn't know they was coming.
I turn to page 12 of this document towards the bottom. Can you tell us what EPA's conclusions were based on their dust sample?
They stated that
This is a legal issue as an application of existing operations exception to West Virginia Code 22.3.22D. It's fine that the EPA is out there checking on it. It's fine that they make conclusions. But EPA's conclusions have no bearing on how that provision of law is properly interpreted or applied. So we're getting pretty far afield here in terms of how this can help the board, this information can help the board make determination as to what the proper legal application of that provision is. Object based on relevance.
I think we talked earlier about scope and intensity of impact.
Well, the scope and intensity of impacts goes to what operations in existence there. If you're maintaining those or doing something consistent with the operations that's there, you can do that. You can't add something new, like a huge silo looming over the school.
That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the issue, and not whether it emits dust, whether it doesn't emit dust, or
one aspect of change or lack thereof, I guess.
yeah, but the change is the issue is whether that's permitted because it's something that wasn't there before. It's not whether it's permitted because of how much dust it emits or doesn't emit. And
I think that's a matter for argument. So, what the evidence is, so Mr. Massey can make his argument.
Remember the question?
yes, their statement was that the train moving operation had no impact on the concentration of airborne dust particles measured by the data RAMs that evening.
Your understanding, that means that they compared the dust levels prior to the loading and during the loading, and there was no difference?
That's my understanding.
Mr. McCombs, do you have an opinion as to whether the use of the second silo, first and second silo, will increase the amount of dust that would be emitted and make its way to the school?
objection, lack of any foundation for this witness's confidence to deliver such an opinion.
He's a registered professional engineer, deals with coal facilities all the time.
I'm an engineering graduate and I deal with coal regulation all the time. My opinion is as good as his. And that doesn't make his worth anything more than anyone else's. This is basically
It probably doesn't take much more common sense, really. If you do not an activity with coal inside the building versus outside. So,
In my opinion, the silos definitely are less dusty than open stockpiles. And, I don't see any major impact of silos.
Have you reduced the use of stockpiles as a result of the use of the first silo?
Yes, we have. We try not to put the coal on the ground. We try to bring it straight through the facility, either from the preparation plant or from the belt line off the hill, put it straight into the loadout.
Now, what is the purpose of the second silo? Does it allow you to double up the amount of coal you're going to load on a train?
No, the way the configuration of the train, you're only going to be loading out of one silo at a time. You can't double up. You can't load two trains at one time. There's not enough rail capacity. All you can do is load 100 cars. What it allows you to do is put more coal in the second silo instead of putting it on a stockpile, and open stockpile we have.
Would the use of the first or second silo make operations noisier or otherwise more intrusive on the school?
I don't think it does. I think the amount of time that you have your locomotives near the vicinity of the school would be the most noise that you have. It's very short-lived. as they proceed down track, it goes pretty fairly rapidly. The
Compared
previous loadouts, they would always be running in that neighborhood because the loadout was further upstream. You didn't have enough car capacity upstream of the loadout to push your empties up, so you were switching cars out more frequently to get a unit train.
Would you have locomotives operating closer to the school more frequently under the old loading mechanisms as opposed to the silo mechanism?
I would think it would be, yes.
Would put those, do you know whether there's areas where the locomotives operate within 300 feet of the school?
If it goes under the silo, yes, they would be.
And if they spent more time there, obviously they'd be within 300 feet. On the old loadout, they'd be, for the old facility, they'd be in that 300-foot range more frequently.
I think that they were, yes.
Are there any other, does the presence of the silos present any other impacts on the school that were not presented by the previous operations on the site?
I don't know, man.
Are you, last exhibit? Going to have marked exhibit number 15 and just ask if you can identify that as a notice of intent to sue sent out by Mr. Lovett last year that is directed to DEP and suggests that silo number 1 is also is operated illegally within the prohibited distances.
It's a document later dated August the 8th, 2005 to Stephanie Tillermeyer, and it appears to, well, it says a notice of intent to file suit.
It goes on to say in paragraph 3, we hope DEP will come to recognize the duties.
Mr. Chairman, why don't we just let Mr. McCluskey testify? He's just reading the documents and allowing the witness to agree with it. Put him under oath.
Objective, ma'am, we talking.
Mr. McCombs, how much is investing in the construction of the first silo?
I think the first silo was around $3 million.
How about the second silo?
We've spent, I think, close to $900,000 on
Mr. McCombs, the days that EPA was there for 2 days?
Yes, sir.
Was that 2 full days?
Pretty much, yes. They arrived around 10 o'clock on the first day and left around 2 or 3 on the second day.
Who from your company was there to meet with EPA?
I met with them, and Robert Ward, plant superintendent, met with him the first day. He had another commitment, and someone else looking around the plant on the second day.
Any parents or citizens there?
Not on our property, no.
Did you go to the school with EPA?
No, I did not.
Anybody from your company go to the school with EPA?
No, sir.
Was EPA there in August? Is that what I read?
Yes, it was. I think August 15th or 16th.
I think I read in a report that it was fairly calm as far as wind goes on the day that EPA was there. Is that right?
Yes, it was.
It's much different from the way it is in, say, January or February. Some days the
It could
wind's
be.
whipping and cold, right?
It could be, yes.
So this is just a snapshot of 1 day's conditions, and it's not representative of conditions every day.
That is a snapshot of that particular day, yes.
Now, I want to understand the picture here a little better. See what that's fine about. Part of Exhibit 1, that's the one marked 7, Exhibit 7, or 738, I can't tell what that is. It's the picture with the line, you know.
Yes.
Now, the circle is the, I guess, the foundation for silo number 2.
That is correct.
no coal there now, is there?
No, sir.
Show me where the coal pile is that you're currently talking about. That's the one way back there in the upper portion of the picture.
Yes, it's back near the preparation plant.
Is your testimony that that will be removed if this silo is built?
No, I'd say we'd be using it less often.
Okay, there'll still be plenty of coal there, though, right?
It could be.
Now, but there is no coal where the foundation of silo number 2 is now, correct?
No, sir.
Is also your testimony that you won't be loading any more coal at this facility as a result of silo number 2?
Testimony is we won't be loading both silos at the same time.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. So you will be loading more coal there if silo number 2 is built and you're currently loading, correct?
Depending on the train traffic. You want to load so much.
So that's part of your reason for wanting to build the silo, isn't it? So you can load more coal there.
Right. So we can get another customer and qualities in the right spot, yeah.
And isn't it true also that a lot of dust comes off the coal trains? Cars, the coal trains.
Loaded cars?
Yes.
We spray it with an encrusting agent as we load the cars.
Still, dust comes off of them, doesn't it?
Not supposed to, that's
What
what
about
they put it on.
what about unloaded cars that they pull into the facility?
Unloaded cars, there could be a possibility that they may load
There'll
it.
be more coal. I'm sorry.
If the car has been sitting out and it's dry, there's potential to get a puff of dust out as the new coal comes into the car.
And there'll be more coal cars through there because you're loading more coal, correct? If silo 2 is built.
Potentially.
That's all I have.
Mr. Combs, you said you're responsible for permitting for Gulf's Call.
Sir, I'm sorry.
You're responsible for permitting for Gulf's Call?
I'm supposed to be, yes.
And how long have you been responsible for permitting there?
Probably about 2002, 2001, I can't recall.
Working in the coal industry before that?
Yes, since 1980.
You have experience with permitting prior to 1984?
Yes.
As I look at the base certified record that's been filed in this case, appears to me that they're listed on there at least 5 correction response letters. Do you know what a correction response letter is?
Yes.
Is that when DEP sends out a request to whatever operator or applicant is involved for
Further
correction of some
clarification.
part of a permit application?
And for further clarification,
Further information?
yes.
Information they didn't get on the application when it was originally submitted?
Yes.
And it's not unusual, as 5 examples attest to in the case of Revision 9, for a number of requests to be made by the DEP on any individual application for a permit or for a permit revision.
You can get a number on, yes.
And usually a bunch.
Could be, yes.
In fact, the complaint from the industry has been, why don't they bundle them all together, make them all at once? You get a lot of them, don't you?
Good some.
And nearly all of them request information that's beyond what was submitted in the original application form.
Yes.
So the fact that the application form itself doesn't request information on what's within 300 feet of the school doesn't mean that DEP isn't out there asking for information, does it?
That is correct. There could be more information they need.
You mentioned that loading of coal at Coal's preparation plant prior to the construction of silo number 1 was undertaken further upstream.
That is correct.
Testimony?
Yeah, that's correct.
More than 300 feet from the school?
Yes. It's 300 feet from the south.
So it was, in terms of the limit that the law imposes on surface mining operations 300 feet around the school, the location where coal loading had taken place before was almost double that. distance away from the school. If it was 300 feet.
Fairly close to double, yeah.
Let me direct your attention to Exhibit 6.
In this document. Okay.
You're familiar with Exhibit 6, aren't you?
Are you referring to this, the document, Exhibit 6?
The tab
Tab 6 on Mr. McCluskey's document?
Let's go to tab 8. Pardon me. Yeah, the one Mr. McCluskey had to go through.
That's the order on July 15th, 05?
Yeah, this was for suspension of approval of revision 8, wasn't it?
Yes.
All right. Now, nowhere on here on this document does it purport to contain any analysis of the application of existing operations exception to the prohibition of mining within 300 feet of school, does it?
It talks about the reason that denied the permit was the order was put out was because of the permit boundary protection.
All right. And with regard to the document that appears at Exhibit 9 in the same set of tab documents, that document doesn't purport to make any analysis of application of the exception to the 300-foot prohibition either, does it?
No, they just they have rescinded our revision 8, basically based on that permit boundary limits.
So neither one of these documents tells you anything about how DEP interprets the existing operations exception to the 300-foot prohibition.
They have not even been mentioned at this point. No.
You said that the first silo cost $3 million approximately,
Somewhere in that neighborhood, I think.
and the second silo cost how much?
We had spent $900,000. It'll cost about the same, or maybe more than that. That includes the foundations and some beams that we've already had on order and had delivered.
All right, now, that's a good bit of capital to be spending on a project at a mine site, isn't it?
It's typical in college.
All right, now, before you decide to undertake a project like that, do you need to get approval from management? You just don't go spending money without
Everything has to be approved, yes.
Okay. And what kind of approval do you have to spend $3 million?
There's approval of several individuals in upper management to sign off on the authorization to spend money.
And
Where do you want this?
I'll tie together an argument, Mr. Chairman.
An object of relevancy, so we can explain it to me now.
Mr. McCombs testified previously that when he submitted a falsified map for a permit application, he didn't know that the very next application that he would be submitting would be for approval of a second, or for a silo in the area where the map boundary was falsified, or if you don't like falsified, changed under his hand. And I'd like to establish that when you spend $3 million at a coal company, it takes those two applications, by the way, according to information in the record, were submitted 2 months apart.
Revision number 8.
These predated revision number 8, and he was explaining how the mapping discrepancy came about in his testimony in the prior hearing. What I'd like to establish is that one does not, when you have 2 months between application 1 and 2, for example, and in application 1 you falsify the map location, and then 2 months later submit revision 2 for a silo. His testimony earlier was he didn't know at the time of revision 1 when the falsification or the mapping discrepancy occurred, that he would be submitting revision 2 for the silo 2 months later cannot be true, because the level of approval needed, or the approvals needed to spend $3 million on a silo at a coal company take longer than that to get, and take more planning than that to get. And it goes to his credibility, Mr. Chairman. And I think that's
testimony in previous case.
Well, that's a credibility of his testimony when he's, or testimony he's capable of giving when he's under oath.
I don't need to teach a witness about something that's about before.
Well, it's in the record in this case. It's evidence. The board's designated as evidence.
I think you probably keep coming.
Okay. That's all I am.
Mr. McCombs, as I understand, is the throughput of the preparation plant changing at all with the construction of second silo?
No, it's not.
So you're not going to be producing more coal by virtue of adding a second silo?
Not necessarily bring more coal through the preparation plant, no.
You still want to load more coal in the plant?
Yes.
I think Mr. Clark was getting at the fact that one of the correction notices asked you was on revision number 9, asked for some information on the history of the permit and activities in the area of the silos that the form itself did not request. Have you ever known DEP in a correction to request additional information on valid existing rights or the application of existing operation exemption to changes that occur within an existing permit?
Could you phrase that, please?
Have you ever known DEP to require or request that you demonstrate valid existing rights or that you are a part of an existing operation again when you seek to change something that's within an existing bonded area?
I think, no, not necessarily in that case. I don't have a lot of experience with valid existing in other areas, so in that time frame, unfortunately, I haven't dealt with this stuff.
The reason for the second silo, did you have an incident before where you had coal loaded in the first silo that couldn't be offloaded immediately?
We're good on scope of cross-examination, Mr. Chairman.
I think, like the local board also, Mr. Lowe, that why the second, or how they written the second.
The reason second silo came up is we had the first silo full of coal that either didn't meet or the customer changed their mind and taken the order. I don't know what the particular circumstance. The train sat there, silo sat there for several days.
So let me back up. The silo's loaded first with this coal.
Yeah, the silo had coal in it, 10,000 ton in the silo, preparing to load the train. For whatever reason, whether the quality was bad, whether the train was diverted or the customer changed his mind, I'm not sure why. The coal sat there for 3 or 4 days in the car or in the silo waiting to be loaded to find a customer to take that particular coal. In lieu of that happening, if you had a second silo, we could have continued to process another order for another customer and shipped out of that train while we were trying to find a customer for the first train.
Make sure I understand. The first silo is loaded with coal, and coal only comes out to the bottom of this thing.
That's correct.
So it goes in the rail car and is dumped on the ground if you can't.
It has to go in the rail car. If not, you got to dump it on the ground, take it down loader, and haul off. I guess the only way I know is
So you had a bunch of coal in the silo that couldn't immediately be shipped out, and as a result, you were stuck and couldn't ship coal out. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And other customers were suffering because of it.
And you don't have that problem where you have stockpiles on the ground.
That's correct.
Any questions from the board?
I have one question. Did you or the DEP or anybody take in consideration of the school operation hours of the school compared to the possibility of operating silos after the hours so that the children are present?
When you load out with a dealing with the railroad, you're gonna have to deal with the railroad schedule, unfortunately. When they have the cars available, that's when we need to load the train.